Hey everyone, in today's video we're going to have a go at modelling this clone trooper helmet from Star Wars. So this is one of the viewer requests that I've had recently. So if you have any other requests, by all means leave a comment down below and I'm more than happy to have a go at trying to figure it out. I am still working through some of the other requests people have given me. If I've not done it for a while, it's not that I've forgotten you, it's just that it's taken me slightly longer than anticipated to model it all. So modeling for everything is done inside of Fusion, and then we bring it into Blender to texture everything. And what I've done this time slightly differently, because the video was going to be almost 3 hours long, and some of the videos I'm getting a bit carried away with some of the videos that with projects are going to be like 3-4 hours long. I've actually sped it up, and then I've sort of like recorded myself talking over the process after I've recorded it. So hopefully you still find it quite useful, but I think because it's 40-ish minutes, it's more like watchable than a 3-4 hour long video. But if you've got any questions, any comments, any requests, please leave a comment down below or email me at designwithsimon@outlook.com. Okay, so I've already got my reference images installed. So if you can't remember how to do that, make sure you go to Insert and Canvas. I'm going to put a link to where I found those reference images. So starting off, we get in the shape of the helmet is dropping over to forms. I grabbed a quad ball, and what I'm going to do is just try and match the overall shape, delete the bottom part, and I'm going to grab that bottom edge, scale it flat, and then drag it down and get you the overall shape. If you follow along to like the Mandalorian helmet, you notice that originally what I did was a quad ball and then joined it with a cylinder. I found this is basically cuts out that step that we know what we need to do. Then making sure you select symmetry, and it's just a case of dragging the vertices just to sort of like match the overall shape as much as possible. It is worth every once in a while just going on finishing form just to make sure that it does finish. Because if there's like errors inside the form, it won't let you go past that point. Then into surface, and then thicken it a little bit just to make sure it's actually like a solid shape. And then it's about a case of trying to cut some details into the front. So I start with the visor, I do an offset plane, and then what I then try and do is just sort of trace around the visor roughly where I want it to be. Basically using a lot of lines, arcs, and then fillets just to round those all off a little bit. Now I will always do it on one side and mirror it over. Because apart from the like scope on the one side of it, the rest of it's completely symmetrical. So there's no sense trying to do it all on both sides if it's not going to match up perfectly. So I do a lot of like symmetry based stuff. So then it's a case of extruding through and cutting through the actual visor. We do the same sort of technique for the rest of the details, like the blue bits that you see, but rather than cutting, what we're going to do, and you'll see in a second, is do intersect. So when you're intersecting, you need to make sure that you copy and paste the original body you're going to cut through, because it will get rid of that. So all I'm doing now is tracing around the rest of the details on the front of the face that I want to do. Again, lines and arcs, doing everything, trying to match up as much as I can do. If it doesn't meet it perfectly, it's not the end of the world. So you'll see, as I said, only doing it on one side. Once I'm done, checking that it's all close profile, and then it's a case of dragging it all, cutting through, and you see I change it there to intersect, so you end up with those extra little bits. Now originally I did it all as one, but then it joined it together, which I didn't want to do, so I ended up having to do it each step individually. So copy and pasting the main part of the helmet a couple of times, just so you end up with that little detail there. And I do that for each one of those little bits that I want to stick out. Once you've got those little details, what I then want to do was press pull the faces to make them actually protrude out of the front of the face a little bit. So under modify, so you got press pull, click on all the faces and drag it out a little bit. You don't want to go too much. I only did like 1.2 mil in the end. You see it's starting to stick out a little bit. Same with the little bit there as well. And then it's a case of rounding off the edges, trying to get those details as close as possible. And again, trying to do the bit at the top as well. You'll see me jump around a little bit. So I've started to do all the details on the front. And because I didn't know how far around it was supposed to wrap around the whole helmet, I ended up jumping to the bit. So you see there, it kind of comes a bit too far. So I wasn't sure how far I needed to do it. So again, you'll see me do the same thing where I press pull to make it a bit thicker. But then after a bit of playing around, which is why I speed these up in the end, because otherwise it's just me sort of mumbling to myself as I'm trying to figure stuff out. So you see me sort of play around with it a little bit. I end up moving up to doing like the bit that you see on the side of the helmet. So again, offset plane again, create a sketch, start tracing out roughly where I want this detail to be. So again, it was lined. Basically, when I'm sketching, it's all lines, it's all circles, it's all arcs. So originally, I thought I looked a little bit too big, so I tried an arc, and it looked a little bit weird. So I jumped back to a circle in the end. But the good thing is you've got 2 point circles, so you can do both points not match up perfectly. Extruding it away so its own separate body to begin with. In the case of trying to like get the shape, so chamfering, drawing more sketches, cutting those details in a little bit more. And then I'll mirror this over because on both sides it's symmetrical. It's just on one side you've got the scope that like comes down a little bit. Bringing that into position, because when you'll see on the final model, those like blue bits like above the visor are supposed to match up to where that side part of the helmet is. So it was a case of like trying to press pull, drag it through. It didn't really work. So what I did was I extruded it up to there a little bit, and then did the same on this one. And what I then tried to do was press pull. Sorry, come back in a second. And filleted. Oh, there we go. So I was trying to press pull that up so it matched up as much as possible. I'll do the same on the other bit as well. So this is why when I'm doing it, I tend to sort of like jump around a little bit, try and match it up as best as I can do. And then because we're nearly there, then I just grabbed it and extruded it, drag it out a little bit. Do the same on the bottom piece. Drag it in a little bit, and because it's a little bit like square, or not square, but you had that sharp edge, then I just like filleted that to bring it round. Do the same on the top bit as well. So just hitting F to fillet and dragging that down to make it match up. So that was pretty much the front part of the like above the visor done. So you see it's starting to take shape a little bit. You also see me like randomly save a couple of times. Obviously autosave kicks in, but I'd never fully trust autosave just in case something crashes. I've had projects in the past like the R2D2 one that crashed loads and I lost loads of work, and I've been jaded ever since. So what I then had to go out trying to do was that little cut, I guess, where like the cheeks would be. I tried a few different ways. This one, it didn't quite work how I wanted to, so you probably see me jump around a little bit. So I was trying to find the best way of doing that. So this method isn't the bit that actually ends up being used. I end up doing a similar method to how I did the actual front bit of where like the visor is, where I do a triangle and cut it from the front rather than the side. But that's why I've decided to try and like record me doing it and then annotate over the top of it. Right, because the whole video was about 2 hours 45, which I don't think anyone wants to hear me like mumble along for that long. So I tried to thicken it a little bit. Didn't really quite work how I wanted to. So we're getting roughly the idea, but then you'll see that I completely scrap what I was doing anyway and change my mind because it kept not looking right really. So you see me like delete everything I just did at the front there. Then I move on to doing some of the detail like the bit at the top, which was quite a simple thing to do. So I started a sketch, I projected the overall shape of the helmet and sort of traced roughly, I don't know what you would call that top bit of the helmet, but started drawing it along, just again, using sketches, using fillets to sort of round that off a little bit. The whole reason of projecting and then offsetting is to make sure that actually match the curve of the helmet perfectly anyway. Trying to then figure out how far along the front of the like crown of the helmet I want it to come across. And then extruding it along, setting its new body so it doesn't join it together. Remembering that it's going to be mirrored across anyway. So that was about right to where we needed it to be. Filleting just to get rid of any like super sharp corners. I do end up at the end of the whole model going around and filleting all the extra sharp edges. So if you wonder why I'm not doing it now, it's because sometimes I do it as I'm going along. Well, sometimes as you're doing that, you end up causing more difficulties later on. So once I've done with that, I then started adding in those other details. Again, where there's like, I guess, like the blue trim is, and it's the same technique that I used before where I do a sketch and then extrude to cut it in, but then do the intersect like before. So I've made sure I've got that shape. And once again, it sketches, it's extrude, it's fillets to get the overall shape, copy and pasting the original helmet, and then I'll extrude it through, and then make sure I set to intersect just to make sure that I get exactly that part. So there, change it to intersect. So I've got that piece. So you see all the bits of trim are starting to come together quite nicely. And again, press pulling, roughly trying to match the bit I did at the front there. And then I have to do that again for the bit with the bigger curve at the top as well. So copying and pasting that one, extruding it and then intersecting, and again, press pulling it. So it's the same technique. A lot of these things, it's the same technique, rinse and repeat. I've found doing a lot of the Star Wars helmets, they're not, once you know the techniques, it's not that difficult, it's just a little bit repetitive with some of the tasks. The only one that's been really difficult to do was the Stormtrooper one more than anything. So then I'm just sort of like press pulling a little bit to like make the bit of the ears, I guess, a little bit thicker. But you can see it's still slowly starting to get the right sort of shape that we need. So next what I was trying to do was the bit, if you look at like the bottom of the helmet where it sort of like flares out a little bit. So I wanted to get a line across so that I could split that body. And then what I'm going to do, again, press pull to drag that out. So drag that out a little bit, and then I chamfer to sort of like make it blend in the shape a little bit more. Something like that. And then I end up filleting it as well, just to get rid of any like really, really sharp sort of edges. Remembering that we're only doing half of it, because once we mirror everything across, it comes infinitely easier. I have got myself in the habit of like trying to press and pull everything just to see how far. Obviously, there's a limit with Fusion, it will like tell you off eventually if it ends up doing it too much. I then brought the rest of the ear down, same thing, press pull to bring that down, and then join that together. So you notice that nothing at the minute is joined. I do join all the stuff that needs to be together at the end when like the modeling side is all done. Then what I do is start to move to doing the details at the back. So it's relatively simple. So what I try and do, as before, is draw roughly the shape I want to do, and I'm going to extrude it in and intersect it again. As I said, it's the same. It's a lot of the same techniques. And roughly get the shape that we want. And then press pull again, bring everything out. Now you'll see what I do in a little bit. I get stuck for a while because I'm trying to make the bottom of that bit I've just pulled out match the trim along the bottom. I kind of abandoned that in the end because actually it's not. I mean, it's not how it was on the reference images, but it's not the end of the world. It still looks good, which was the main thing we were looking for. But I tried lofting a couple of times, wasn't really cooperating. And then a couple of things because I joined it together. I was trying to like delete a face or like replace faces. It didn't quite work as well. So much like with certain parts, try it for a little bit, get frustrated, abandon it, move on to something else, which is what you see me sort of like play around with for ages. So it's the same sort of thing. We could continue to try and play around with this part repeatedly because then I tried to join them together and then press pull as they were joined, and that didn't work. You see it get an error in a second. Yeah, so tried that, and at the end I sort of like abandoned the bit I was going for because in the end what I had there looked fine. So you see it's starting to take pretty good shape now. So this is now where I start to do detailing for like the inset of the cheek a little bit. So I do this, I've cut from the front rather than the side. So I get a bit more of the shape that I want. So you'll find, so there I was chamfering it and it was not really doing it. It's because there's a duplicate of the body underneath it. So I got rid of it and then extruded it, chamfered it rather, playing with the two distance so I can push it further out without going too deep. So you still get like that sort of like the chamfered look a little bit. Now you'll see, obviously, there's going to be a gap now where that is. The same as like with the visor and the bit at the back as well. We will sort that out later. I was just trying to get the overall like shape and the cutouts done to begin with, because we've got the original body, like the surface from when we did our form. We can go back and change that loads anyway, so it's not actually a big deal. So this is the same as the inset on the bit on the cheek as well. Same sort of thing. So cutting through, duplicating the body, setting it to cut that out, and then I have these little bits that I was trying to delete. Sometimes just selecting a surface and deleting it works. Sometimes it doesn't. So when all I ended up doing then was like drawing a random shape just to cut it away as like a cutting tool. Sometimes Fusion, you need to try and outsmart it a little bit. And again, chamfering, but doing a two distance so that I can put the width of the chamfer further than the depth of the chamfer, if that makes sense. So bringing everything in, so you can see there we've got the details. Save everything again because I don't trust autosave. So you'll see that I'm going to slowly start trying to like fillet loads of little details a little bit. I then play around with, with this area again because it's still sort of bugging me. I think I ended up chamfering it, but nowhere near as much as I was playing around with it. Clearly, it was bothering me as I was doing it, so I was sort of like tinkering loads and loads. So we've got most of the details done now. So now it's a case of adding the last little bits in. So doing a sketch, doing a circle. As you extrude it through, you can play with a little widget to sort of like make it like a draft angle of it. Made it a little bit too big to begin with, but the benefit of Fusion, obviously, I can go back to the original sketch, drag it down, make it a little bit smaller. Again, starting to like cut those little details in. So the whole idea here is just so I can draw a line and then offset it and use that to like cut those little details down. And then you see those little extra faces. This is where you can select the face, hit delete. Most of the time it works okay. So try it. Sometimes it doesn't though. I've never figured out why sometimes it doesn't, but it is what it is. And so what I then do here is draw a rectangle but drag it up. And the idea being that originally I was gonna circular pattern it, which you see now. But what I ended up doing was splitting it in quarters and then mirroring it across. So I still attempt to do the circular pattern a couple of times. Realize that's not going to work. So what I then do is go to construct like mid plane to make a plane in the middle of each of those little like channels, so I can split it all apart, mirror it across. So then I can just get rid of those, mirror, and mirror at the bottom. So we've got that. You see those extra lines there? It's because we've got overlapping faces. So originally I try and fill it in, it doesn't quite work because we've got all those little extra faces. So I just sort of select those faces, hit delete to get rid of them. Like that. So that bit is done. Then added a little fillet just to get rid of any like sort of sharp edges to everything. Again, still playing around with the chamfers on the back piece. I do end up chamfering it properly in the end after I sort of like can't get the look that I like. So then what you see me start to do is try and like start mirroring everything over, because we're pretty much done with the overall shape of it all. So it's a case of like there's some bits that overlap on both sides of the bit at the back. You see it's how it goes over both. So it's a case of just mirroring everything across. And here is where I start to add those little bits. So with the visor and the cheek and the back bit is I take the original body, sort of extrude it inwards and like do a combined cut to get those extra little bits. And then I just draw a little sketch just to get rid of like that bottom bit of the trim that we don't want. So I end up tracing around just so I can split the body, and then I can get rid of this bit that I don't want like that. So that gives me those two bits there. So it now fills in sort of where the cheeks and the back of the helmet were. Then it's a case of trying to mirror all the other details across. Now originally I always set it to new body rather than drawing, because if it like it'll join everything together. Then it's a case of going through and trying to combine everything, making sure I set it so don't keep the body, so just combining all the bits that I want to be one solid piece. Keeping in mind, one, probably going to end up with 3D printing it, and two, texturing it in Blender as well. So anything that I want to have a different texture, I make sure I keep as a separate body. So pretty much done with most of the shape of everything. So you'll see me sort of play around a little bit. I've obviously still got to do the like the scope bit on the right hand side as well. So all I'm doing now is going through everything is now combined. I got rid of all the extra bodies that we don't need. So I then start to do the detailing of the scope on the right hand side. And again, it's just a case of extruding, bringing it through. Then what I do is a tangent plane, so I can draw a lot basically on the surface of that cylinder, cutting little details in here so it looks like it can move around, and then press pulling to bring that in a little bit and combining it back together again. And drawing another cylinder in the middle, dragging it up to the sort of height we need. Again, I press pull to bring that down, and then press pull just to make that a little bit of a thicker cylinder, like that. Cutting the little details into, combining, cutting. So you could go combine, target body, what you're going to cut into, tool body, the bit you're going to use, and then cut, but keep the tool, because I want to keep hold of the actual like stem of the scope. I have no idea if that's the right name of the part, by the way. I'm just sort of what would make sense. No, when I did this, the whole point of this was to try and get one. I had a construction plane in the middle. I could have just done axes for a cylinder and done a plane at an angle instead. So I kind of did an extra step for no reason there. Here, I'm just sort of like roughly pointing out the sort of shape that I want it to be. Change it to new body. Using that plane that's directly in the middle, so it'll make sure it's directly where it needs to be, and then doing it symmetrically. Like that, and then filleting all the edges to make sure it's rounded off nicely. So what I'll then do for a while is go around and fillet quite a few parts. Now you might find fillets where you get that red line where it's not working, so sometimes just start with the smallest possible fillet you can do. And here I'm sort of like clearing up all the extra like interfering faces where there's like overlapping bits that I want to get rid of. So again, that's sort of like go and combine, cut, and selecting the bit I want to cut off and the bit I want to do it with, but making sure I keep so I don't accidentally delete anything. Going around and just filleting everything. You don't want to go too heavy with fillets in terms of like a massive fillet, but you do want to fillet all your edges. You don't want to keep the sharp edges in Fusion over into Blender or for 3D printing, because it doesn't look right. So you always want to like have even like a small fillet is fine. So again, just working my way around, trying to fill it all the edges I can do. And then combine cutting to get rid of all the extra little bits that we don't want, so it all meets up quite nicely. So it's a nice easy for texture. And then the last little bit really is to do the bit detailing at the back, like the little like channel at the back of the helmet, back of the head. That's just extruding and then cutting through, but just a plain cut. We don't need to do intersection or anything like that. Just cutting through. And dragging one, and then what you can do is do a rectangular pattern, so you can do loads of them at the same time, and then just filleting, just rounding off all those edges a little bit, like that. And then it is a case that I was just going around, tidying everything up, deleting all the extra little bits that we don't need. So lots of combined cutting so that the bits that are intersecting actually cut into each other, so it's fine, and then just clicking extra faces and deleting. So you see me sort of going around a lot of time, combined cutting, and then filleting all the edges so there's like a nice look to it all. And a lot of that is it's just the same all the way around. Filleting any last little bits of edges so we've got nice little looks to them, and then combine cutting any of the little bits so it makes sense, so everything lines up perfectly. Because there's loads of little bits of face and things we aren't going to need, and then filleting. Now, some of these fillets you actually wouldn't have ended up being able to see anyway, but I'd have known they were there, so it would have bothered me if I hadn't done it. And then also, if I do end up 3D printing it, or you end up 3D printing it as you've done it, bits will fit together nicely. Okay, so just sort of going over the whole of the model, just checking I'm happy with everything. Then one of the last things I end up doing is on the inside. You see, I've sort of got those like overlapping inside bits. So what I do is I use the original body and use that as a cutting tool to get rid of all those overlaps on the inside. Because you're going to have intersecting pieces, it's fine, but we don't want, if you see like there, we've got those big blocks sort of sticking through. So you see me take the original body and extrude that, or thicken that rather, in a little bit. So sort of play around with it. At first I thought about just making it really thick, but that wouldn't really be that good. So I've now got this body here as like a cutting tool. So then all I do is I bring each body back, and each time it intersects like this, I then go to combine, cut, grab the tool, grab the body I want to cut, and grab the overall shape of the cutting tool, and then cut, but keep that. And I just work my way through all the bodies like that, so they all match up here. So it gets rid of all those extra little bits, and then grabbing the extra bodies we don't want, and right click and removing them. It is worth always, now in this case it probably wouldn't matter, but rather than deleting, right click and going on remove, because if you delete, it can mess up bits in the timeline at the bottom of Fusion, so you end up with like loads of red like errors for any actions that you've done. So if, as long as you go on like remove, then it sort of like gets rid of that. Okay, so then I bring everything back, just give everything one more once over, check I'm happy with everything. So that's looking pretty much where we need it to be. So in that case, so make sure I save everything. I'm going to go to export all. Oh no, the last thing I start to do, sorry, is there are little details along the side of the helmet that I forgot to do. Now, the first thing I try and do is try and do an emboss, which I do, but first of all, it took Fusion like 15 minutes to try and do it. And I got so here's where I try and do an emboss, but actually ends up eventually doing it. But it took ages to like think about it, and I got worried it was going to crash because it's a weird surface. It's not like perfectly like cylindrical or perfectly straight, so I get some weird effects. And actually, it's sped up now, but when it was full speed, that took like 15 minutes of it trying to do it. So it looked quite funky, which I didn't really like. So you see, even sped up, so this is 3.5 times speed. That's still taking ages. So in the end, I sort of like abandoned doing it this way and actually cut it into like the side airy bit because it doesn't look all that great there. So I try and fillet it and I get some like results that don't look great. So I'm just deleting the features. I decide to just do it on this bit here, so like the bit where like along where the ear is, and do it that way. Do one and then fillet it and then pattern it across like that, and then I'll do the same on the other side. Now I could have just mirrored that body over, but at the time, I don't know why I didn't. I just wasn't thinking. And then same thing, pattern across like that. Again, going through checking everything is good. Then when I'm happy with everything, save all, file, export, and change it to FBX. Then we jump over to Blender to go texture in it. So that's a case of selecting everything, bringing it in as FBX. Now I use Blender Kit to apply materials to everything. To begin with, I add a few lights in just so you can see how it's all going to start looking. So I like to do it like a rim light at the back and then 2 lights like from the side just to sort of show it off a little bit. So yeah, for texture I use Blender Kit, which is completely free to apply all materials. I do have a couple of paid ones that I use to sort of help with detailing as well. So I use something called One Click Age that lets you add things like edge wear and grunge, that sort of thing. I've also recently bought something called Fluent Materializer. You see me play around with it a little bit. I'm still trying to figure out how to use it properly. But it lets you add some like good details and that sort of thing. So it's trying to get like a good view of where I want everything to be, lighting wise, and then you'll see me start to add some materials and everything in a minute. I also, sorry, I forgot to say I use an add-on called Images Decal, which lets you add decals like stickers and stuff onto it as well. That one is free, so there's only 2 are free, 1 is paid. So the 2 free ones, Blender Kit and Images Decal, and the paid one is One Click Age on Blender Market, which is now Super Hive, I think. I can't remember off the top of my head the new name for it. They recently changed their name. So playing around with different materials. So then what I end up doing is picking like this metal one. Now it doesn't matter if the color is wrong to begin with. So obviously you can just add in like a color ramp and change the colors quite easily that way as well. I always try and go PBR materials rather than procedural materials. So PBR being that it's got like images for the texture. So in terms of like it's got like an albedo like color map, it's got a roughness map, it's got a metallic map, it's got a bump map rather than procedurally like generated. Then when I'm happy with one, I sort of grabbed all the other parts that I want to do. And if you do Control L, you can link the material so it all matches. Because this is a fusion model and the topology is not great, all I'm doing is cube projection for a lot of this anyway. To get a base color, I then use the same material for the bits that can be blue, but I then duplicate the material. So it's going to be a separate material. And then I change the color ramp of it to make that blue. And then I can make all the other blue bits as I want and then unwrap those as well. And then for the visor, I use a plastic base, but then I take the roughness map and I make it a very glossy. So take the roughness right down, so it makes it more shiny. And then unwrap everything. Again, I just for this, just cube projection because there's nothing complex in terms of unwrapping that we're doing. So what I then start to do is use this is Images Decal to bring in those little details. So I made these inside of Photoshop. Originally, I wanted to try and like paint the details on, but I couldn't like get the sharpness of it with the right brush. So I just made these. I basically found an image of Rex's helmet from Clone Wars, traced over those details inside of Photoshop, brought them in, and then brought in a color ramp so that I could play around with the color a little bit. Obviously, it was black. I want to change that to white. I will change that to blue. Sorry, make sure I'm matching the hex code of the blue trim on the rest of the helmet. And then I want to mirror that across. So you see me here. What I then do is I select it and I change the origin of it. So I select it, and then you see me put the cursor to the origin of the world and set the origin to 3D cursor. So then I go Shift D to duplicate it. Or originally I try and use a mirror modifier, which doesn't quite work. Then I just Shift D to duplicate it, right click and mirror it along the X. So I've got it on both sides. I do the same for this other piece as well. So exact same thing, bring that into position, scale it down, add a color ramp to match that blue hex code. And then same thing, I do Shift D to duplicate it, and then right click to mirror in the X. But before you do that, make sure you set the origin, move the selected the cursor to origin or the 3D origin, and then set the origin of the actual thing there as well, and then it comes across. I then start to add in a few other decals. So I noticed a couple of them, they had like this called like the tally mark of like things on the side here. So annoyingly, originally I had the color variation the wrong way round. When I did that inside of Photoshop, because originally I was going to like, as I say, use that as like an alpha brush to try to play around and see if I could like invert the color of it, which worked. But then I kind of wanted to get rid of the white bit. I probably could have set up like an alpha mask to get rid of that bit, but in the end, you see me like pause for a second. I jump back over to Photoshop and change that. So you'll see me like, yeah, save it. And then here I've suddenly gone back into Photoshop and changed it. So I've got a new one now. Drag this over, scale and bring it down, bring it into position. And then duplicate it a bunch of times. I do the same on the other side. So I mirror it across, much like I mirrored like the sharp bits of the front a little bit more. Like that. And then there's one more decal that I made in Photoshop, which is just like a rounded rectangle. So the curves at the front there, the corners were rounded up a little bit. Bring that into position. Playing around with the scale a little bit. Then duplicate that across. Now, it took me a second to clock what was happening here, because basically the decal, the actual size of the truck, the decal, where the bit was like the alpha where there's nothing showing, was overlapping. So I just changed the offset of those so that it didn't interfere with itself. Then mirror those over as well, like before. Like that. So then what I start to try and do is just trying to add some sort of like imperfection. So you see me start to use Fluent Materializer, which I bought from Blender Kit / Superhive. A little bit, so you play around with it. So here I'm just playing around with like, so the images decal lets you play around with like the worn amount of like the decal, so you can make it look like it like scratched and that sort of thing, which is quite cool. I will put links to all of these down in the video description as well. So here I've got Fluent Materializer, so I can try and like add in some details. I'm still very much getting used to this add-on, so I'm not amazing at understanding how this works. So I play around a little bit. I end up using it to make sort of like what the word be. So it's like cavity, but ambient occlusion. Sort of get where it like intersects. You got like that shadowy bit a little bit. So clearly there's a lot of potential in this add-on. I just clearly need to make sure I understand how to use it properly, rather than just randomly trying to plug things in and hope for the best. Here's where I use like the cavity, and you get the idea. So like where the edges meet the edge of another object, it sort of get that little bit of shadowy thing. So it is essentially like ambient occlusion. I will say that right eventually. I'm doing the same on the bits of trim as well, so the blue bits, and then I do the same on the black plasticky bits as well. Then I finish off with just using one click age to add some of those little details as well. Yeah, the last little bit I do one click age just to add like some edge away and stuff like that. So hopefully you've enjoyed following along. If you have any other, so this is like the first one I've done like proper like viewer request of this one. I am aware that people have requested certain things that I've been trying to figure out, but I haven't quite managed how to do it yet. So someone asked me to be able to do like the Batman cowl. I am still trying my best to figure that out. It's giving me quite a headache trying to do it, but just know that I am attempting to do that. If you've got any requests, by all means, please leave a comment down below. I'm more than happy to have a go at trying to do. I think it's quite fun having a challenge to try and like figure out. But yeah, hopefully you enjoyed following along.